Hey everyone, it's Eddie Kalegi reminding you that each and every episode of Sports Speak is powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is a one-stop shop for tickets to concerts, sporting events, and so much more. And now you can use the promo code SportsSpeak on the site to get $20 off your first purchase. So what are you waiting for? SeatGeek. Let there be live. And now on to the show. How's it going, everyone? Happy November. Hope you had a great Halloween, and welcome to another edition of Sports Speak Live, episode 154, powered by SeatGeek. Use promo code SportsSpeak, one word, all caps, for $20 off your first purchase online. Eddie Kalegi here, Tim Moore taking the week off, but we do have the coach, Brett Hawn, in the building. Got a lot to talk about. He is a Rockets fan, so I want to get his take on the latest James Harden trade. We're going to talk about the World Series too. The Texas Rangers, one win away from winning it all for the first time ever. Some turnover in the NFL. Josh McDaniels out as coach of the Raiders, multiple quarterback changes. And the trade deadline is in the past. The Cowboys stand pat. The Niners and Eagles both make moves. We'll discuss. But we have to start with the Sports Speak Fantasy Football League, where I'm starting to feel a little better about my team. I've gotten back-to-back wins. I'm now at 3-5 on the year, and I play against Tropper this week. So all in all, I'm feeling okay about where my fantasy team stands. However, our guest from the Pee Wee Herberts at 2-6, I don't think has to be feeling all that good because you have been pretty much in a free fall since like
Am
September
I
15th.
2-6?
I think, wait, are you 2-6 or are you 3-5?
I thought I was 3-5.
Oh, you are
I mean,
three and
I don't
five.
know, truthfully.
You are 3-5. You're
Okay, all right. I'm
you're
like,
better
I'm
than I
2-6.
thought.
That's even worse.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But I'm looking at your team right now, and there's one name that really jumps out, and that's Davante Adams, who is a great receiver, but did absolutely nothing this past week. A lot of that because of Jimmy G.
Oh my God, dude. Look, I feel like, and my friends and I have a running joke about this because we do $100 league with 2 flex spots. Every player I touch turns to stone. Every single player I touch in fantasy. This is the first year I just to put it in perspective, I have multiple teams. This is the first year I had a chance to draft Nick Chubb. I was very excited, looking forward to having consistent running back play. He's always been a good yards per carry guy, very efficient. He's got a workhorse role over there in Cleveland. What's he do? He f's up his knee, tears like three ligaments. I'm like, all right, well that's great. And then this sports speak, the gimmick draft, I felt really good. I mean, on paper last year, this team would have won a championship. Like, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Davante Adams, Brandon Ayuk, Jordan Addison, Evan Ingram, Tajay Spears, CJ Stroud, even, who's like, he's cooled down a little bit, but he's still a middle of the road quarterback. Like, but all the pieces can't put it together. Like Joe Mixon, he had a 20-point week last week, but before that, the highest he scored in the season was 14.5, having a very inefficient up and down campaign. Davante Adams, the Las Vegas Raiders. Listen, I see why they made the decision at 2 a.m. last night to fire both McDaniels and Ziegler. They've been nothing short of disappointing. Davante Adams, he was targeted, I think, 7 or 8 times last game, finished only a reception for 11 yards. There was visible disappointment on the sideline for him. And for me as a fantasy owner, I mean, he's done nothing. Like and for a team like in desperate need of wins, because it seems like all us Rutgers guys, Eddie, are just at the bottom of the barrel here. I don't know what the hell's going
I
on. I
know. I
thought we all
think
did
it's rigged
well.
against us. I don't know what's going
Yeah,
on here.
it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I got kind of lucky, and this isn't to throw shade because he's been going through the most in this league, and I feel really bad for him. I got lucky. I played Alex last week. Okay, like Alex been going through the ringer. I feel really bad for bro, but I needed that as a get right game, so bad, you know. But part of my big part of my fantasy struggles are it's the quarterback position, I guess, to a degree, and Davante Adams. Just where is he? Where'd he go?
Yeah, for me, like I've gotten back-to-back wins. I was all the way bottom of the barrel beginning of the season. I play Tropper again this week, so that should be interesting. But I have had an interesting year as well. Again, not as bad as Alec, but you lose. I lost to Hoffman, which I should not have done. I did beat you early in the season, but that was before things started to fall apart. But back-to-back wins, pretty convincing over Alec and Miniker. My team is coming together decently well right now. Sam Howell might actually move into my QB1 because he is scoring more points than Jared Goff, even though the Lions are the better team. Lions have a bye anyway this week. Running back is the thing that's a problem because I started Miles Sanders because he was back from injury. And for some reason, he only got 2 carries, 0 yards, 0 points. So Kareem Hunt now is in my starting lineup as one of my running backs. And I'm not getting any buys right now. All of my buys come up the next couple of weeks, which is going to be really bad in some ways. But with the way the gimmicks are, it might actually work out for me because then I can try to sign another running back. The thing that still really bothers me is that I put in a waiver claim first for Jaylen Warren, not Zach Evans. And somehow Alec, even though I was ahead of him in the waiver order, got Jaylen Warren. I got stuck with Zach Evans, who isn't even playing for the Rams. So it's like, what kind of algorithmic logic is going on here, ESPN Fantasy? I put in a claim for him. I'm number 1 on the board. Give me Jaylen Warren. So that's why I'm still stuck with Kareem Hunt now as a starting running back, but he has found the end zone the last 2 weeks. So hopefully that will continue. But let's stay in the NFL, Brett, and talk about some other storylines. Trade deadline. So the Commanders fire sale. They get rid of Montez Sweat. For some reason, the Bears seem to add when they're bad and trade players away when they're good. So explain that logic to me. I don't know. But Chase Young is also gone, and he's going to the 49ers. So San Francisco makes a big move. The Eagles added Kevin Byard, safety from the Tennessee Titans, because the Eagles only make trades with the Titans and the Saints, it seems like. But the Cowboys did nothing. Was this a mistake, Dallas standing pat?
Ooh, I mean, honestly, yes, because you got to contend with Philly, who's arguably a top 2 team in that. Well, not even arguably, it's true. They're a top 2 team in that conference, right? They give you, not they give you, excuse me. The Cowboys against better teams so far, we've seen a mixed bag, right? Like, you get the LA Rams. Granted, I'm not saying they're world beaters, but they were off to a surprising start offensively. Dallas dropped, and defensively even for that matter, Dallas dropped 43 on their head last week. That's because of much improved play from Dak Prescott. But then you look at the other extreme, the 49ers game, right? An absolute massacre highlighted by defensive weaknesses in quarterback play. You can argue that they might need a second or third receiver. Maybe more like a third, because as good as Brandon Cooks was, it's clear, he's older now. Michael Gallup's still decent. CeeDee's going to put up his stats. CeeDee's unreal. But the Cowboys need something else. Something's missing, that spark. And for a team like Dallas, who it's pretty clear, if you've been watching football over the years, that Dallas is never in rebuild mode. Ever. Doesn't matter where their team's at. They could trot me out there, quarterback, and they'll still be looking to win a Super Bowl championship and buy at the deadline. But surprisingly, they didn't make any moves. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Eddie, but I don't think Dallas is really one to even make moves at the deadline to begin with. So I guess this is kind of on brand.
Mm-hmm.
But excuse me, but you have to think, like, in your position and with so much talent, uncontrollable salary like CeeDee Lamb. Tony Pollard's still on a cheap deal for right now. That they would want to take advantage of this window, and that they should, even with the threat of Philadelphia looming.
Yeah, I really think you have to if you're Dallas, and I think the offense needed some sort of a bolster. I think the defense is fine. They've done a good job. And I know they're scoring 40 points against bad teams. They scored 10 against San Francisco. I don't know what to expect with this Eagles game this weekend. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Tony Pollard is good, not great. I think the Cowboys should have tried to make a move to bring in an established running back. And I know the running back, sort of market isn't there in free agency, but that doesn't mean you can't trade for one that's red hot right now and get him at a good value mid-season to try to bolster that running back room. Because for the last few years when Dallas has been good, but still hasn't been able to sort of break through and get to the NFC Championship, they had the pairing of Zeke and Tony Pollard. So you'd kind of want both of those two running backs there. Zeke's gone. Tony Pollard's been all right this year. I would have liked to see them make a different move and kind of add to the table with another running back. So I think they're still lacking in terms of giving Dak Prescott weapons. Now, they just put up 43 points against the Rams. Besides the Arizona game, they've taking care of business against the teams they should beat. But let's be honest, that's also on brand for the Cowboys. They'll have a couple of awful games against bad teams where they'll lose by multiple touchdowns, which is completely outclassed. I remember that game against the Broncos where they were down like 30-0 a few years ago when Denver was really bad. I think when like Jeff Driscoll was their quarterback or something. So it's typical for Dallas, but the schedule is not easy for them or Philadelphia coming up. And that's where we segue. Eagles and Cowboys this weekend. I'm very excited. I'm hopeful that T. Glass gets humbled, Skip Bayless gets humbled, and the Eagles get the win. This is the first time since 2021 we're actually going to get Jalen Hurts against Dak Prescott. Both times when they matched up last year, one team had a backup quarterback. What do you think? Eagles have looked vulnerable at times this season, but they've only lost one game. Dallas has done well against bad teams this year. One time against a good team, they lost by 32. Who do you have the edge going to Sunday night?
Yeah, I just want to point out that one loss to the Jets.
Yes, I'm aware.
Baby.
A good game for the
And
Jets.
yeah, that was an excellent statement game. But yeah, I feel like honestly, and you know that this might, I don't know, this might get some flack, but whatever. I feel like this game could go either way. You know, in terms of, you know, how does Dallas win this matchup? It's how do they establish their passing game early? You know, we outside of Darius Slay, we haven't really seen a consistent performance from Philly's defensive back groups. Wide receivers have been lighting them up. I believe, let me think. I think it was eight. It was 6 touchdowns in the last 3 games, I think, scored by receivers against the Eagles secondary. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a point in which Dallas needs to attack. Now, it's not easy because, as we've seen now with the addition of Jalen Carter, I don't know how that man fell. This Philly defensive line is still very much a top 5 unit in the NFL. I mean, they're absolutely incredible. Their pass rush is something to behold. So I think for Dallas, really, it's about finding the ability to get their passing game going early and really forcing their Philly second level to drop back into coverage more. Because if they're able to stack the box, it's game over. Like, that's Philly's game. They're going to play an aggressive style of defense. And looking at the opposite side, kind of leading into the whole Eagles thing, you just got to continue what you're doing. Figure out ways to get the ground game running. DeAndre Swift's going to be a huge component in this game. Jalen Hurts, I mean the tush push, like everybody's advocating to ban it, but nobody else could do it. I mean, that's a big part of Philly's repertoire here, and very important for them.
Brett had a little bit of technical difficulties, but the coach is back. Nothing stops the coach. He's here, and let's move forwards. The Eagles, Cowboys, I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think Philly holds the advantage this time around. Big thing for Philly is now they're going to have a bye week right after where they can get healthy. I think when they play in Dallas, though, next month, unless Dak gets hurt, I think Dallas is winning in Jerry World. I think this is another situation where these two teams will split and the home team will prevail in the two matchups. But the Eagles are in a really, really arduous 6-game stretch coming up here before they finish with the Giants and Cardinals and the Giants again. They play Dallas twice, Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, and Seattle over the next 6. That is not easy. If the Eagles can come out of this 3-3, I'm very happy. I think if you can go with the Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, and Seattle games and split those 4, ideally take the 2 home games, which I believe are Buffalo and San Francisco. If you lose at Arrowhead and you lose against the 13th man in Seattle, you'll be fine. I think if you split Dallas, you're 3-3 in that stretch. You'd be sitting 10-4 on the year with 3 cupcake games to finish out the season. Birds are in a good position, but these next 6, not easy. Thankfully, they get a bye week and get a full 2 weeks to prepare, actually 15 days to prepare for the Chiefs on Monday Night Football on November the 20th after this game with the Cowboys, but it should be a good one. Now, Brett, the New York Jets have found a way. Now, that was one of the worst football games I've ever seen played on Sunday. Thomas Morstead, the infamous butt punter, was in prime punting form. And so was Jamie Gillen for the Giants. And they combined for like 24 punts or something in the first half, something absurd like that. It was ridiculous. And the Giants ended up choking that game away. Zach Wilson actually led a really nice drive to get the game-tying field goal. And then Greg Kalegi wins it in overtime, and the Jets win 13-10. And all of a sudden, the Jets are sitting here 4-3. And we keep seeing the videos of Aaron Rodgers on the field throwing passes. If the Jets can at least tread water, they can get to 9-8. They have a real shot to steal a wild card spot. And if Aaron Rodgers is ready, you know he's going to be out there and trying to win a Super Bowl.
Dude, before we go into the Rodgers speculation, first and foremost, like I just want to say I completely agree with you. That game on Sunday was an abomination. I am so happy I was driving back from Ohio and I could only listen to the radio, because I bet you if I was watching that, I would have absolutely lost my mind. To put it into perspective how bad it was, Eddie and I are both in a fantasy football punter league on ESPN, one that I am the commissioner for. Each punter for the team at over 80 points.
I forgot to look at that. I was curious how many they got.
I was versing Jamie Gillen. He had 80.9, and Tommy Morstead had 82.3. Brutal. Absolutely brutal performance. But great if you're a fan of punting or if you're in this fantasy football league. But, kind of going back to the whole Aaron Rodgers thing, yes, we've seen a lot of videos. For me personally, I'm impressed that he can put weight on the foot already when he's dropping back to throw. I think that's the biggest thing, because when he was first throwing, everybody was like, oh my God, Aaron Rodgers throwing already. But yeah, you could throw. It's just how much of your motion can you complete? And for Rodgers, he's able to get a decent drop back going. Granted, he's not able to jog. He's still walking into it and hoisting back to throw. But that's still light years ahead of where most people are in this stage of recovery, especially if you're a 39-year-old quarterback. For the Jets, you alluded to it earlier, Eddie. The key is to stay afloat and hopefully push for one of those wild card spots. I'm going to be honest with you, the way Zach Wilson and that offense plays is an absolute nightmare. Every week is a matter of, can the offense do enough? Because I feel bad for the defense and special teams, man. Their backs are really hurting right now. Like, that is the only reason why we have 4 wins. The Jets offense is ranked 32nd in the NFL, and it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. And 2 or 3 of Zach Wilson's, I think it's 2 of Zach Wilson's passing touchdowns are off of one, that dump off of Breece Hall, which we got lucky because the Giants just missed every tackle in sight from what I've come to understand. And the Garrett Wilson slant that he took to the house. Those take no effort. All these Jets fans in the comment sections and, through text message texting me like, oh, Zach Wilson's looking so much better. I'm like, bro, just watch a full game of film. I'm going to say this till the day he's off the team. Or if he randomly becomes Patrick Mahomes, whatever. He is trash. You are not winning games with this guy. I want 2010 Mark Sanchez back before I want this man as my quarterback. So I'm praying to God the Jets can hold the line. But I'm going to be honest with you, like, every game looks more and more stressful. And the fact that we lost to Don Bosco, or we won by 3 points against Don Bosco legend Thomas DeVito, that's concerning.
Bryce Petty or Zach Wilson?
It's tough. Dude, that's actually.
He's a legend. Baylor University.
Yeah, finest. He said Madden made him a better quarterback. I'll never forget him. He said Madden made him a better quarterback. Then he played like 3 or 4 games, and then he was out of the league.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'd probably go with Bryce.
Really?
Actually. Yeah, because at least he can actually push the ball downfield.
Yeah. The Jets have just had such a miserable history of quarterbacks just over the last 10 years, really since Mark Sanchez. I'm just thinking of some of these names. Christian Hackenberg, Greg McElroy, didn't he play for the Jets at some point?
Yep.
Of course, the Sam Darnold Odyssey. I mean, Ryan
Todd
Fitzpatrick
Boyd
is
didn't even make
arguably
the
the
team.
biggest bright spot of a Jets quarterback besides the 4 plays Aaron Rodgers played over the last 10 years. And that's when Fitzmagic is your bright spot at quarterback over a 13-year span, that is not good.
Far from it. That and Josh McCown, the 1 year he had, I think it was 2018 or 2019. Like those are the only two quarterback years that we are genuinely excited for. The rest of it's just been absolutely disappointing.
So, one team that might be a little disappointed right now shifting to the NBA is the Philadelphia 76ers with all that happened with James Harden. And now Harden gets dealt. The Clippers have a 2015 All-Star team of Russell Westbrook, James Harden, Kawhi, and Paul George. I don't see that going very far no matter what, because nobody besides Westbrook can stay healthy. Westbrook and Harden are both kind of insane in their own ways. I don't see that working at all. But the Sixers didn't get a ton back for James Harden. And I think this really signals something. So I posted an article last week on the website, sports-speak.com, the plug. I really talked about how I think James Harden is kind of becoming Kyrie Irving, and maybe even worse than that, because at least when Kyrie Irving shows up and is on the court, he plays and he plays well. James Harden, when he just gives up, he does not give 100% effort. You can have all your critiques of Kyrie Irving and his opinions and the reasons he misses games and all that. But when Kyrie Irving is suiting up and steps on the floor for your team, you can trust that he is going to give 100% effort and he's going to put up a good game. James Harden has been free falling in his ability for the last 4 years. It's been getting worse and worse. He was exposed multiple times in that series against Boston, and now for the third time in 3 years forces his way out of somewhere. Brett, I know you're a Rockets fan, and that's where this all culminated at the beginning of the 2020-2021 season. I'm a Brooklyn Nets fan. I dealt with it myself. Now the Nets get Ben Simmons for James Harden. Suddenly Ben Simmons is the guy who's playing. And James Harden, after he wanted to stay a Sixer for so long, wanted to be a Sixer for 3 years. Now he wanted out and he gets traded. And because of all of this building up, the Sixers don't get all that much back. Oh, great. They get Robert Covington, a star of the 2014 Philadelphia 76ers back. Plus, you give up PJ Tucker, who for some reason is just tied to James Harden and just gets sent wherever James Harden goes. What do you make of this latest move from both the Sixers' perspective and the Clippers? And do you really see any value left in James Harden as a player at this stage of his career?
Well, to answer I'll start with the second part of your question. It depends on how locked in he is. Because at this stage of his career, you've seen his playmaking improve. I mean, he averaged double digits assists last year. He's somebody where if he's locked into playing team-oriented basketball, he still carries immense value. And we've seen that shift in him over the last 2 seasons. You know, that Houston Rockets isolation James Harden is a thing of the past, even though it was quite impressive to watch as a fan. The biggest thing with that, though, is being locked in. Now, you've alluded to, Eddie, this is third team in the last 4 years. You know, the first team, you're like, you know, okay, Houston, you know, their playoff runs are over. You know, James Harden's getting older, not younger. He kind of needs to go to a team where he's ready to win a ring now. He got very close to Houston, but can he get back to that point? Then he gets to Brooklyn. He's teamed up with Kyrie Irving, who's the biggest moron in the history of sports, and Kevin Durant, right? Which that team, you know, if they're all healthy at one time and could have made a push. Kevin Durant, as we all know in that series against the Bucks, was literally a toenail away from changing the entire trajectory of the series, right? But outside of that, there wasn't really anything of value. James Harden, again, getting fed up with his teammates, and we have Kyrie on your team. I really don't blame him. And then, you know, makes his way over to Philly. In Philly, you know, sure, you don't have the super team, so to speak, that you did in Brooklyn, but you still have a really competent team, right? You got a solid 3-headed horseman. Embiid's one of the best centers in the league, probably top 2, only behind Jokic. You got James Harden, who was a perfect complement for him. He hasn't really had that level of success in the pick and roll since he was with Clint Capella a few years prior. And Embiid is like absolutely clears Clint Capella in almost every single statistical category and defensive metric there is. So you can argue that's an upgrade there and what was already an area of strength for Harden's game. Tyrese Maxey has really come into his own. He's an incredible player. PJ Tucker was an excellent glue guy. Georges Niang, who's now with the Cleveland Cavaliers, great backup stretch big. And Paul Reed, even, that was a player I really liked on the Philly. Paul Reed, very underrated piece, a little undersized for a center, but very, very competent. Philly
For
had
some
pieces,
reason, I just want to say Doc Rivers just refused to play Paul Reed last year. Even when Embiid was
right?
out, when Embiid was in foul trouble, for some reason, he just had a vendetta against Paul Reed.
Right, which is absolutely ridiculous because he gave me like I don't know, he reminded me in a way of Kenneth Faried if Kenneth Faried had more motivation in him. Very energetic, can run the floor, competent mid-range player, very, very, very aggressive on the hustle plays. I mean, that's you need every player like Paul Reed on your team. You need a player or two or three, you know. So why Doc Rivers didn't play him, I don't know. It's why Doc Rivers is out of a coaching job, but that's a whole different conversation. Um, but going back to the James Harden point, you know, it really just depends on him at this point because once you got to the third team, you're like, all right, like he's starting to become a little bit of a diva. For me, with Harden being one of my favorite players, it's tough to, or I don't even know if he is now because he's just become such a diva, man. Like it's hard. It's hard to root for the guy, but he can still play ball. As for the Clippers, I completely agree with you that every 2014, 2015 NBA fan would be like, wow, this team is loaded. This team is insane. But that's 9 years ago at this point, right? Like they, it all depends on health. Paul George has had his fair share of troubles. Kawhi just plays when he feels like it. He's tuned out. And honestly, I don't blame him. You got Russell Westbrook, who was god awful as a member of the Rockets, and really like after his Wizards days is really not useful anywhere besides a bench role, which he doesn't want. And James Harden, where does James Harden fit? I feel like right here, you're talking these four guys, three of them, you can argue that two or three of them are ball dominant players. Where do three ball dominant players fit in an offensive timeshare? It creates a lack of spacing. It creates a lack of ball movement. And defensively, well, not defensively, excuse me. It creates a lack of ball movement, creates a lack of spacing. And most importantly, it slows down the tempo on your offense. And in an NBA where tempo and transition play is becoming increasingly more important, you got to wonder how four old guys, three of them being ball dominant players, are going to fit in together. And I just don't think it's going to work.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Now, what has worked, and let's finish this, our last sports topic here, baseball. The Texas Rangers, despite losing Max Scherzer, who's been completely useless to them in the postseason, and as a Mets fan, I enjoy seeing that, and losing Adolis Garcia, who had been the best player this entire postseason on a swing in game three, excuse me. They win game four and now are a win away from winning it all. And the Texas Rangers have never done that before, despite being in this position multiple times before. And we all remember what happened back in 2011, but they now have a commanding 3-1 lead and seem to be doing everything right, Brett. And it's funny, a lot of Met fans sort of were critical of the idea when Jacob deGrom said he went to the Texas Rangers because he wanted to win. And people were like, oh, this is a Texas Rangers team that's won 65 to 70 games a year the last 4 years. And what's happened? They're a win away from the World Series. And it's almost like I know a lot of it was because with deGrom, A, he didn't want to be in New York anymore. And B, they offered him a crazy amount of money. And you can't say either of those things in a press conference. So you go with winning as a default. But it's almost like he also had some forethought because the Rangers made a lot of really positive moves this offseason. This pitching rotation, you bring in Monty at the trade deadline, you add Nate Eovaldi, who no matter how old he is an elite performer in the playoffs, regardless of what role he is, whether he's a starter, a reliever. Andrew Heaney has turned his career around over the last couple of years. That bullpen has been serviceable. Aroldis Chapman hasn't blown anything up too badly for them in the bullpen. And then you got Seager and Simeon, who, both got paid ridiculous hauls, but they're living up to it. And the youngsters, Evan Carter, Josh Young, Jonah Heim, all coming together, making big plays for Texas. And the Rangers are a win away. Like, how are they doing this? I mean, they were able to beat the Astros. Of course, the Diamondbacks, a shocker to be able to come out of the National League. I think the Rangers were a little bit favored going into this series, but they have taken firm control besides game 2 when Merrill Kelly shut them down.
Yeah, and you alluded to, Eddie, the biggest thing here is the consistency in their starting rotation. That was a concern in the Houston series even. Yeah, they could go toe-to-toe with Houston in terms of hitting, but how will starters 1 through 3 fare? Jordan Montgomery has been an absolute revelation. Dude has had an amazing playoff series, playoff run, excuse me, not even series. He's had an excellent run. Andrew Heaney, you alluded to, he's coming in relief. He started yesterday's game, played really well. John Gray, even out of the bullpen, granted, his regular season, his ERA was okay. It was like I think it's 4.12, something along those lines. It was okay, but he's done well in his limited action. Nate Eovaldi, it seems like any time he's not with the Yankees or Red Sox, he's just doing unreal. So, we see what Nate Eovaldi can do. And one man, I think, that if he didn't miss 40 plus games, would have been at the front of the conversation, the NL MVP without question, is Corey Seager. Corey Seager has had an amazing campaign. That's continuing to the playoffs. Now, there was a point in yesterday's game where he had 3 total hits in the World Series. All 3 were home runs, right? What amazing impact. Marcus Semien, he struggled throughout the course of the divisional series, was starting to hit the ball at a little bit better of a pace in the championship series, but the World Series has been a revelation so far, living up to his big contract. The Adolis Garcia thing's a tough blow because he was, I think, did he set the record for most RBIs in a playoff run?
He was close. I don't know if he said
Yeah.
it, but he was right there. He probably would have gotten to it if he had played the distance.
Yeah, and that's another powerful hitter in your lineup. You pointed out Josh Young, excellent young third baseman. You got him batting in the 8 hole. Mitch Garver, even we didn't even talk about Mitch Garver before. He's been serviceable. A lot of these hitters are hitting over the 260 mark, and when your entire lineup is doing that, like there's no shock that they put up 10 runs in a 3-inning span yesterday. I mean, it's been nothing short of impressive. I'm in a tough position as a Mets fan because I really want DeGrom to get his ring. I'm going to be honest. Like, I'm rooting for that heavy. But at the same time, I don't like Max Scherzer. I'm sure you don't either, Eddie. But
yeah, that's what the inner conflict is here as a Met fan. Jacob DeGrom, I really want to see get a ring. Max Scherzer, I really don't, given the circumstances. I'm happy that the trade got the Mets Luis Angel Acuna, but the way Scherzer spoke about the team afterwards and the way he did not show up in the 2 biggest games of his Mets career and did not show up really at all this season, it left a sour taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I agree. And just look how many former Mets are in this series too, by the way. You got Travis Jankowski, who I completely forgot he's with Texas, I'm going to be honest. Tommy Pham, one of the key cogs in Arizona's batting lineup. I think he's for them. Paul Sewald closing out games, former Mets legend at the closer spot, right? You got Miguel Castro, Diamondbacks reliever. Like you name it, you name a team, there's a Met there. I mean, we got like 5 of them in this series. So
yeah, there's a lot there. Miguel Castro looked like a Mets reliever in game 4 with the way he just started serving things up. But congratulations to the Rangers if they do end up locking it up. Again, they've got 3 chances to clinch, including 2 at home, but they'll try to lock things up tonight in game 5, sending Nate Eovaldi out there against Zach Gallen. That'll just about wrap up this episode. You brought up Tommy Pham. Let's talk about our Halloween costumes before we sign off. I went with the Frank the Tank look, and Alec was my Matt Piper Jenks, and both of them actually shouted out our costume, which was really cool. Brett,
that was awesome, bro.
I know. You know what? If you're gonna dress up as someone, if you can get them to recognize your costume, I mean that makes the holiday. Now I don't know if you'd get a piece of bread to recognize you, but you were Brett Hawn, so that was an iconic costume.
I appreciate it, bro. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, one of my friends, Mike, great guy. He texts me. He's like, "Bro, you gotta go as Brett Hawn. You gotta go as Brett." I'm like, all right, sure. I'm like, sure, fine. $30 Amazon. I got 2 uses out of it. Went out to the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and I had a party in New Jersey. Got some solid use out of it. So can't complain.
That is awesome. And that will wrap up this episode of Sports Speak Live. Next week, previewing the college basketball season. We've got some fun stuff planned for that, so you won't want to miss it. Follow along. Our NASCAR Pick'em wraps up this weekend on X at Sports Speak Live. Tim has pretty much locked up that championship, but we'll see if any surprises happen at Phoenix. My NASCAR prediction, I think Christopher Bell is going to win the championship. We'll see. We'll talk about it next week. For Brett Hawn, I'm Eddie Kalegi signing off of Sports Speak Live. Enjoy the start of your November, and we'll talk to you next week.